Howdy, 2005 GMC with a 4.8 doing the oil pan gasket. So first thing you need is the drip pan so you don't get oil all over your carpet. Right. Okay, first thing you'll see on the oil pan, right about here on the oil pan, it says alignment and torque critical. This is true. And this is why. Where the oil pan meets the transmission, which is right here, there's two 15mm bolts meet right there at the transmission. Try and get my big head out of the way. Now, if you tighten up the bolts here on the block, and that oil pan is even 1mm away from that transmission, you're going to end up cracking it because it's constantly under stress because it hasn't moved tight against that transmission housing, and you're constantly pulling on it because you didn't align your oil pan properly. So that's why as you go, you gradually tighten these to flatten the gasket on both sides. Tighten them up gradually as you also get some tension on those bolts at the transmission, so that as the oil pan goes up, it will also be going up on that bolt, and there won't be any stress vertical or horizontal. That's the whole idea behind the torquing. So I'll try to show you that as I go along. And also you want to replace the O-ring on your oil pickup tube while you're in there. The best one is Melling because it comes with both of them. If yours turns out to be green, replace it with the green one. If it turns out to be black, you replace it with the black one. And the instructions that you get in the Melling pickup tube O-rings will tell you further details about that. Now here on the oil pan itself, the factory gasket is actually riveted to the oil pan. So you, instead of drilling this out, you get a whole bunch of metal in your oil pan. I'll show you what to do. Just bend it up a little bit right there, like I did on this one here. And then take your small flat lead like this. Put it under there. And just snap that off. As opposed to drilling it. Come right off. That way there's no metal shavings, no nothing. And it shaves it off flat enough to where you can put your new gasket on. Now this is a fairly clean engine. They really did well on their oil changes and everything, but one thing you will always find in the pan is these. Nothing but sludge. So like I say, that's generally that's the type of oil that you use. I can't seem to narrow it down as to which oil is the best. Mobil 1 seems to be, but most of this is just sludge from the natural oil. So you want to get all that cleaned out when you get your pan off. It's really not that bad, but you always find that in the bottom, no matter how well you do your oil changes. Now when it comes to cleaning up this surface after you've gotten your gasket off, I do this with all surfaces, top of your head, where the intake manifold goes on, all of that, with the razor blade. I see guys using the the wheels to clean this off. And with aluminum, that's not a good idea because it takes off too much material and makes this uneven. So if you just take a razor blade, it gets all that stuff off nice and flat. It doesn't damage the surface. It leaves you with a very nice flat surface. Sometimes flatter than the factory. Nice and flat. You're not taking off any material. It scrapes off all that oil and all the other bad stuff. Makes for a very nice, clean surface. No oil, no grease, no nothing on it. That's the way I do that. And of course, you want to do the same thing with the where this meets your block. Just take your razor blade from underneath there and just scrape it nice and clean. Then you'll have two nice flat surfaces to work with. Take a little bit of brake clean. Clean off the rest of this stuff from here and on the block. Ready to go. So I've got the pickup tube back on. The instructions tell me if the O-ring is a red O-ring, you use the green one. That bolt right there, that is bolts the pickup tube to the oil pump. That is to be torqued to 12 Newton meters. And then the two nuts that hold the pickup tube to the block, those are to be torqued to 25 Newton meters. The ones on the outside of the pan, where the oil pan meets the block, they go to 25 Newton meters. The two back here, the long ones, they go to 12 Newton meters. And then the bolts with the transmission, where it meets the oil pan, they go to 50 Newton meters. Now, another thing you want to do is check your screen. Make sure that it's clean, there's no sludge or things like that in it. Make sure to clean that. And what I do on the gasket is I'll put gasket maker on this outside edge. I don't usually put it where the urethane comes on the actual gasket itself. I just put it on this outside edge. That way it makes its own seal. I put it on the pan. I put the new gasket on it, and then I put gasket maker on this edge all the way around. Makes it last 10 times longer, especially if you're using Fel-Pro gaskets. And one more thing, when you go to push that tube into the bottom of your oil pump, be sure and lube up the O-ring, because it takes quite a bit of pressure to get it in there. Keep it aligned as close to your studs here as you can. And just gradually kind of wiggle it back and forth. But make sure you put some oil on that O-ring so that it goes in there properly. So this is what I'm talking about as far as your gasket maker. Just put it on the outside edge around the oil filter pickup. Don't put it in around that, just the outside edge of it, not in here. Just around the outside edge. And then I flip this over. This is the opposite side. So flip it over, put it on the pan, let it dry a little bit if you want. That way it'll stay. And then put this same bead on the block, on the outside edge of the block. That way you don't disturb it because you'll disturb what you put on the other side of this. So this actually goes this way. So on the block itself, you'll have on this outside edge on the block. That way, as you put the pan in there, you don't disturb any kind of silicone or gasket maker at all. So put it on the gasket, stick it on the pan, and then put some on the block. Just a thin bead. You don't need much. And then set your pan up there and torque it down. So this is the gasket maker that I prefer. 90-minute. And this is what I was talking about here. Just a small amount on the edge there. All the way around. Not around those two holes for the oil filter. And another place to concentrate is right here with the rear plate meets the block. Right there. Both sides and also up front here. Where these two meet. You want to make sure and get that covered, both sides. And make sure it is clean. Make sure there's no oil on it. And then now we'll be setting our pan in there, torquing her down. Okay, so I've got these torqued. Now the sequence on these is important as well. But kind of backing up a little bit. You know, my dad always said that if I had a brain, I'd be dangerous. I'm sure he meant well. But anyway, taking anything off, oil pan, head, intake, there's always a sequence that you need to use to get the bolts off. Because you don't want to take these center bolts out first. Because then you're leaving your outside edges with too much pressure. Okay? So when you go to take this off, an intake, a head, you always start on your outside edges, getting the bolts off the outside edges, because you don't want your outside edges with more pressure than the inside, because the outside edges are vulnerable. So as you take this off, you get your four corners bolts out on each ends. Okay. Get your outside edge bolts out, and then you work towards the middle. Now when it comes to torquing them, it's the opposite. You want to torque towards the middle, start at the middle, and go to the outside edges. Again, same thing here. Work towards the middle, go to the outside edges. Now, when it comes to the pan, you want to do your two middle ones, go to the other side, do the other two middle ones, and then do this one here, back here, go to the other side, do the same one on the other side, and so forth. You work from the middle to the outside edge as you're torquing. You don't always torque it to the specified torque setting because you want to do it gradually, but start in the middle, both sides, work towards the outside and your edges, and then after you've got them torqued, I go around every bolt at least 4 times, because you will see as you go torquing them that some of them have loosened, because every time you tighten this one, it takes a little bit of pressure off of that one and the one next to it. So that's why you'd want to go around all those bolts 4 times. And you do the same thing when you're torquing your lug nuts on your wheels. You go around, you torque them all, then you go around them at least 4 times. And that way you know you've got each one thoroughly tight. You especially want to do it in a situation like this, because you don't want any oil leaking after all this work. So there's that.